Hello everybody. Today I am going to be showing you a pretty decent budget commander deck. And the commander today that we're going to be looking at is Tergrid, God of Fright. Now, this commander has a pretty strong ability. First off, Menace, pretty good. But the real meat of the card is whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you may put that card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So basically, whenever somebody discards or sacrifices, you're gonna get that permanent. So, and whether it be a creature, an enchantment, an artifact, it could also even be a land. So, pretty good. And yeah, so we're going to be looking at all the cards that make this deck pretty decent and also don't cost a lot. So in total, this deck cost me about $90, and it would cost less if you got the cheapest version of every card. I did not get the cheapest version of every card, like this Bottomless Pit. This cost me about $15, but that's because it's a secret layer. So in reality, it would not cost you that much. Anyways, let's get into it. So what you need for this deck is you need cards that will make players sacrifice and discard. Now, a lot of the good cards that will do that will make every player sacrifice and every player discard. So that's why this deck also includes a lot of the cards that will bring back permanents from your graveyard. So while every player is discarding and sacrificing, you're getting all their cards and you're getting yours back. So the first card that we're going to take a look at that I feel is very important to the deck is Bottomless Pit. So there's a 3-mana enchantment which says at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player discards a card at random. Now, not only is that people discarding, which you're gonna get whatever they discard, it's also random, which means that they're not gonna be able to choose just the land or the kind of crappy card that wouldn't help you that much and wouldn't help them that much either. You could get something really good out of this, and every turn it's going to be doing some good work. But that, like I said, this deck has a lot of cards that will bring back stuff from your graveyard, so that makes this okay, since you're going to be able to get your cards back. Here we go. Here's a Planeswalker that's in the deck. So this is 4 mana. Liliana, Waker of the Dead, starts out with 4 loyalty. So for 1 loyalty, each player discards a card, and each opponent who can't loses 3 life. So you're getting players to discard cards, which is what you want, basically, or lose life, either or. But the good thing is they have to discard a card if they can. -3, target creature gets -X until end of turn, where -X is the number of cards in your graveyard. That's pretty good, because basically, like I said, you're going to be discarding a lot of your own cards, sacrificing a lot of your own at times, so that can be a really good loyalty ability at a certain point, certain circumstances. And -7, now, if you can get her up to 7 loyalty, that would be really good, because you can get an emblem that says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It gains haste. Now, by a graveyard, it's going to pretty much be your graveyard, because Tergrid will basically get everybody else's. So if you're discarding if you have cards that make every player discard a card, that's going to be really good to get yours back. Now, this is just a land. When it enters the battlefield, it enters tapped unless you control 3 or more swamps, which is another really good part of this deck. Is since it's monocolored, it's just mono black, so you're not going to be spending a ton of money on lands, because a lot of times that's what takes up the majority of the cost, is lands that just make the deck a little faster. And it has a little ability here. When it enters the battlefield untapped, you may put target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. So just another thing to take stuff out of your library or graveyard with. Gray Merchant of Asphodel, 5 mana card here for a 2/4. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life, where X is your devotion to black. So basically, each opponent is going to be losing a bunch of life because it's mono black, and your devotion is going to be pretty high. And then you gain that life. Gain life equal to the life lost this way. So say each opponent loses 10 life. If you're in a 4-player game, you're going to be getting 30 life. So, pretty good. Next, we have Soul Shatter. Now, this is a really good card. For 3 mana, each opponent, so not you, each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker with the highest converted mana cost among creatures and planeswalkers they control. So, basically, you're going to get the creature, the creature of theirs that costs the most mana, which is a lot of times going to be their best. So, very good. Infernal Tribute. You can pay 2 to sacrifice a card in play and draw a card. Basically, you're going to be able to get this card back from your graveyard a lot of times, and it's just good card draw to make your opponent sacrifice and discard more. Abyssal Gatekeeper. So, this is a 2 mana creature. 1/1. If it is put into the graveyard from play, so basically if this thing dies, which, there are cards in here that'll have you sacrifice and discard, but sacrificing is what you're going to want to do it to, because each player will choose and bury a creature he or she controls, so basically that's going to die, and you're going to get it. Abhorrent Overlord. Now, this is a 7 mana, 6/6. It has flying, and when it enters the battlefield, put a number of 1/1 black harpy creature tokens with flying on the battlefield equal to your devotion to black. So, basically, a lot of harpies are going to come out onto the field, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you're going to have to sacrifice them, which is going to probably be a harpy, one of the harpies you created, but those harpies are also really good creatures to sacrifice for some of the other cards in here. Beseech the Queen. Now, this one you can either pay 6 colorless, or you can just pay 3 black, which is going to be 3 black in this deck. And it's a sorcery which lets you search your library for a card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of lands you control. And then you can reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. Now, that's pretty good, because nothing in this deck costs too much, so pretty much you're going to be able to get the creature that you want, or a card that you want. So, pretty good. Basically just a good tutor there. 4 mana sorcery. Each other player discards a card from his or her hand, and you draw a card for each card discard this way. So, 4 mana. You're going to get the creatures that they discard, or permanents that they discard, if they discard permanents, and I get to draw 3 cards. You get to draw 3 cards, so that's really good. Next we have Barter in Blood. It's a sorcery, 4 mana. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures. So in total, you're paying 4 mana. You're gonna get 6 creatures. Well, minus your 2, I suppose. Undead Gladiator. This is a 3 mana 3/1. For 2 mana, you can discard a card and return him to the graveyard. From your graveyard to your hand. Activate this ability only during your upkeep, and you can also use it for cycling. Not too great, but pretty good. Next we have Diabolic Tutor, a pretty popular card. Definitely the cheaper alternative to Demonic Tutor. You can get a card from your library for 4 mana. Pretty standard card there. Killing Wave. You can pay any amount of mana plus black for the ability for each creature its controller sacrifices it unless he or she pays X life. So basically this is going to be a board wipe, or a really good way to get rid of a lot of tokens if somebody's playing that. Alright, we got a 1 mana 2/2 here. Enters the battlefield tapped, and for 3 mana you can turn it from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate this ability, only time you could cast a sorcery, and if you have 1 or fewer cards in your hand. So basically just a creature to get some speed in there, get some attackers and a blocker early in. Now this is a really good one. So for 2 mana, you can get an enchantment that says, whenever an opponent discards a creature card, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. Whenever an opponent discards a land card, you can add 2 mana to your mana pool. And furthermore, when they discard a non-creature, non-land card, you can draw a card. So basically, this is one of the most powerful cards in the deck because your deck is made for them to discard cards. So whatever they discard, something good is going to come out of it. You can have your 2/2 black zombie creature for sacrificing for other cards' abilities. You can gain mana, or you can draw a card. So basically this is ramp, this is card draw, and it's creatures all in one card for just 2 mana. So really, really good. 2 mana, each player loses 1 life, discards a card, sacrifices a creature, then sacrifices land. So in total, you are going to be getting your opponents to discard a card. So you're going to get 3 discards, 3 sacrifices, and then 3 lands. So basically, again, you're getting ramp from the lands. You're getting creatures. Yeah. Dark Ritual, pretty standard card. You get 3 black mana for 1. Good deal. Claws of Gix. 0 mana artifact, which for 1 you can sacrifice a permanent and gain 1 life, which is pretty decent because you're going to be getting a lot of mana in this deck, and you're going to be having a lot of creatures or permanents that you can sacrifice, so not too bad. And if it really comes down to it, you can always just sacrifice this if you really need it. Next up, we got the Bolas Citadel. So basically, this is a 5 mana artifact, and you may look at the top card of your library at any time, and you may play lands and cast spells from the top of your library. If you cast a spell this way, you can pay life equal to its mana value you have to pay life equal to its mana value rather than its mana cost. So you're going to be able to play cards for your life rather than your mana. So there are cards in this deck that can help you gain life, and you can sacrifice 10 non-land permanents to have each opponent lose 10 life, which is something really good to take people out. So that's a pretty good one. Next up, Delirium Skeins. Each player discards 3 cards, so basically, yeah, you're discarding your cards, but you're also getting 9 other discards from your opponents. So it's a pretty good trade-off because in those 9 cards, there's probably going to be some pretty decent stuff. And another thing about you discarding your own cards, there are cards in here that are just kind of simple creatures that you can put them out onto the field if you want. But a lot of times they can be there just to sacrifice if it says every player needs to, or discard, I'm sorry. If a card says every player needs to discard, so rather than discarding your good cards. So actually a Bloodsoaked Champion. This is a 1 mana 2/1. It can't block, but for 2 mana you can return it. from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate this ability only if you attacked with a creature this turn. So, again, this is one that you can just sacrifice and then bring back, just when it says every player does. This is a 6-mana instant. It says Delve. You may remove any number of cards in your graveyard from the game as you cast this spell. Costs 1 less. Destroy target non-green creature. It can't be regenerated. So basically you can play this card for down to 1 mana just to destroy a creature. Pretty good. Or you could discard this card. Up to you. Phyrexian Reclamation. So 1 mana enchantment where you can pay 2 mana and 2 life to return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So really good. One of those cards that can help you get your stuff back. For 5 mana, Demon, 5/4, which has flying. At the beginning of each opponent's end step, that player chooses up to 2 creatures he or she controls, then sacrifices the rest. So this is a very good card. This is something that every opponent is going to want to get off the field, but even just 1 or 2 upkeeps, end steps, and this is going to be doing you some really, really good stuff, because you're going to get pretty much most of their creatures. So, very, very good card. You want to keep this guy alive at all costs. And there is some protection in this deck, so you can, there's Kaya's Ghost form to make it so when he dies, he comes back. There's Swiftfoot Boots. There's you got options, but that is something that you want to keep alive. Reassembling Skeleton, just a 2 mana 1/1. You can return him from your graveyard to the battlefield, so it's just something you can sacrifice or discard if you want. Alright, here we got a Mythic Planeswalker for 5 mana. Tevesh Szat, Doom of Fools. You can add 2 loyalty to create 2 0/1 black Thrall creature tokens. Now, again, those can be used just to sacrifice, or even, sacrifice. Pretty much, that's all they're good for. At 1 loyalty, you can sacrifice another creature or planeswalker. If you do, draw 2 cards, then draw another card if the sacrifice permanent was commander. It's never going to be a commander, but it's still really good. You can sacrifice to draw 2 cards, that's great. And then for -10, you can gain control of all commanders. Put all commanders from the command zone onto the battlefield under your control. So, if you're able to get that -10 loyalty ability, that's very good. But chances are you're just going to be using it for the +2 and +1. Doomblade, destroy target non-black creature, just a simple removal spell there. Mind Slash. It's an enchantment that costs 3 mana. For 1 black, you can sacrifice a creature, and target opponent reveals his or her hand. Choose a card from it. That player discards that card. Play this ability only anytime you could play a sorcery. This is a really good one because, you can get rid of the card of your choosing, and basically, you get to choose a card in an opponent's hand that you want, and it's pretty cheap. So, really good card there. Vampiric Rites. A pretty popular card, I'd say. 1 mana enchantment. For 2 mana, you can sacrifice a creature and gain 1 life and draw a card. Pretty good. Pretty popular black card. 4 mana, Drag to the Underworld. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is your devotion to black. So basically, it's going to cost you 2 mana to destroy a target creature. Some more removal there. Can't go without it in a deck. Arterial Flow. So, for 3 mana, you get a sorcery that says each opponent discards 2 cards. So that's 6 discards that you're getting, and you get those. If you control a vampire, each opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. There's not too many vampires in this deck, as a matter of fact. I don't even know if there's vampires in this deck. But if there is, that's great. But no, you're really looking at that discard ability there. And then we got a creature card here for 2 mana. It's a 1/2. Sacrifice 2 other creatures. Any number of target players can lose 2 life and sacrifice a creature. And you add 2 black mana and draw a card. So basically, you're going to be sacrificing some of the smaller creatures that the cards make, and you're gonna be getting some mana, card draw, and some of your opponent's creatures. So pretty darn good. 2 mana sorcery, destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls. You lose life equal to that permanent's mana value. Just another removal spell. 3 mana, Mimic Vat. It's an artifact with imprint. Whenever a non-token creature dies, you may exile that card. If you do, return each other card exiled with Mimic Vat to its owner's graveyard. That's an interesting one. I guess I never gave that one a proper read. Turn each other. Interesting. And for 3 mana, you can tap it to create a token that's a copy of a card exiled with Mimic Vat, and it gains haste. So basically, you're going to be able to get a copy of target creature with Mimic Vat here. And you can exile it at the beginning of next turn. Well, you have to exile it, but still, pretty darn good. Next, you have Mind Stone. Just a mana rock. You can add some mana with it, or you can draw a card. Burnished Heart. 3 mana, 2/2. You can pay 3 mana to sacrifice it and search your library for 2 basic land cards, put them on the battlefield, tap, and shuffle. So, a little bit of ramp there. Mana Rock here, 1 Power Stone. When it enters battlefield tapped, and you can add 2 colorless with it by tapping it. Mind Rake. Target player discards 2 cards. That's already pretty good. And for Overload, you can change all instances of target with each. So each player discards 2 cards. That's what you're going to want to be doing, because you're going to be able to get 6 creatures. Well, not necessarily, but 6 chances at getting good stuff. Decent land here. Mortuary Mire enters the battlefield tapped. You can add black mana, but when it enters the battlefield, you may put target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library, so you get stuff back from your graveyard, which isn't bad. Rotting Wrath's just a tiny little creature. When it comes into play, each player discards a card, which is what you want, and you can return it from your graveyard to play. So basically, you can, and it gains haste, and you have to remove it from the end of the game at the end of the turn. So basically, you're getting 2 things where each player is gonna discard a card, which is obviously what you want. For 1 mana, each player sacrifices a creature, so you're gonna be getting 3 creatures for 1 mana. You only have to sacrifice one of yours. Star Compass enters the battlefield tapped, and you can add a mana. So, Plaguecrafter, 3/2 creature that says when enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. Each player can't discard the card, so sacrifice and discard. It's basis of the whole deck. Everflowing Chalice, multi-kicker too. You can kick it as many times as you want for 2 mana. Enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it for each time it was kicked, and you can add 1 mana for each charge counter on it, that's pretty good. It's a pretty good ramp card. This is a pretty good land. You can add a colorless, but for 2 mana, you can have each player draw a card and then discard a card. So, you're going to be getting those cards that they discarded onto the battlefield. Yes, Grimoire. 4 mana artifact. When an opponent discards a card from his or her hand, you may draw a card. So, really good, because opponents are going to be discarding a lot of cards, obviously. So, oops. Fleshbag Marauder enters the battlefield. Each player sacrifices a creature. Here we have a Saga, which stage 1, each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. Each opponent discards a card. And for the third one, put target creature card or planeswalker card from a graveyard, which is going to be yours, onto the battlefield under your control. So it does everything you need it to. Sacrifice, discard, and then you get one of your own things back. And that's each opponent, each of those sets. So you're going to be getting 3 of those each time. Mana Rock here, you're going to be adding mana. Decree of Pain. A black board wipe for 8 mana. You can have all creatures destroyed. They can't be regenerated, and you draw a card for each creature destroyed this way. So, not bad. And, yeah. And if you're able to play your commander after that, well, never mind. You can cycle it, and when you cycle it, all creatures get -2, so that can be good for getting rid of tokens that people are creating, or just small creatures in general. Demon's Disciple. When it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices. Solemn Simulacrum. 4 mana artifact golem. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield, shuffle, and when it dies, you may draw a card. So you're getting a land, and you're going to draw a card when it dies. Here's one of the really good cards in the deck. Now, you're going to be getting a lot of mana in the deck from certain cards, black cards that give you mana, and also the ramp. So, this is one of those newer Thunder Junction cards, the spree cards. So, initial cost of 3 mana, but you can, make it 4 mana, target opponent sacrifices half the creatures they control rounded up. For 6 mana, target opponent discards half the cards in their hand rounded up. That's a lot, because you get to choose which opponent, so obviously you're going to be choosing the one with the most, and overall you're just going to get a whole lot of value out of this card. And if you have the mana, make it 8 mana overall to have target opponent loses half their life rounded up. Now, that's not necessary, but if you have the mana, why not do it? Right? So that's one of the really good cards in the deck. Now, Reanimate, pretty popular card. Just for 1 mana, you can bring a card back from the graveyard onto the battlefield, and you lose life equal to its mana value. Pretty simple card. One of the medallions here, the Jet Medallion, which says black spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. That's a tongue twister. For only 2 mana. So this is a really good artifact for any monocolored deck. They have them for each color, and if you can get this out on the field, it's just gonna make your play a whole lot easier. Virus Beetle, 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards. Swiftfoot Boots. I'm pretty sure everybody knows what it does, but in case you don't, it gives your creature hexproof and haste, so basically protects your creature. Kaya's Ghost Form. Now, this is a really underrated card that I don't see people using that much, even though I feel like it's really good, and I like to use it whenever I can in my black decks. For 1 mana, you can enchant creature or planeswalker you control, and when it dies or is put into exile, you can return it to the battlefield under your control. So basically, it gets a second chance at life. Now, it does not stop people from putting on enchantments that make it so your creatures can attack or block or use abilities, but for 1 mana, that's pretty good. Hymn to Torok, pretty popular card. A lot of people know what this does, but for 2 mana, target player discards 2 cards at random. The randomness is a really good part because, obviously you're going to be using this deck, you're going to be getting what they discard, but they're also going to be losing something that, they don't know what they're going to lose, so that's really powerful. Murder. 3 mana, destroy target creature. Just some removal there. Charcoal Diamond, some ramp. 2 mana, you can add a black. Liliana's Triumph. Each opponent sacrifices a creature for 2 mana, so that's pretty good. And if you control Liliana Planeswalker, which there is one of those in there, you can have each opponent also discards a card. So, in total, if you control the Liliana Planeswalker, you're going to be getting 6 things that you can put onto the field under your control, so that's really good. Soul Ring. Do I even need to say anything? Wayfarer's Bauble, just some ramp there. And lastly, some removal, go for the throat. So, that is, and then we have some more lands here. Myriad Landscape, Enters the battlefield tapped. You can add colorless. You can sacrifice it to search library for 2 basic land cards. Put them onto the battlefield, and then basically all you really need for the rest of the deck is just swamps. That's the great part about it. And you have this Temple of the False God. You can add 2 colorless if you control 5 or more lands. So yeah, that's the beauty of this deck. Monocolored is a really good way to go if you want a cheap deck, because that's a lot of times that can be half the deck's cost or more. It's just lands that make your deck a little bit faster. So that's really a good tip for building any budget commander deck, is just don't use as good of lands, or just go monocolored, so you're not really at too much of a disadvantage. But yeah, this deck is also really good if you're playing against somebody that has a commander that also involves discarding cards. You're gonna be able to get those cards back. Yeah, and a mill deck, if you can get stuff out of the graveyard of a mill deck, that's really good. A deck that will make people draw lots of cards where they have to discard down to hand size. You can really take advantage of a lot of other types of decks with this. So, like I said, in total, cost me about $90. I'm sure you can find it cheaper, because I got some secret lair editions and stuff. And in total, and a lot of these cards you probably already have laying around in your collection already. So yeah, this it does not do as good if you're playing against only one person or 2 people, but the more the players, the exponentially more powerful this thing gets. So yeah, think about giving it a try. I'll leave the deck list in the description, and the deck list might have a couple of different things. I just switched out some of the cards that were coming out in the Bloomborough set, because I didn't want to wait for them. And there might be a couple of cards that are different, just because I chose the cheaper option that did basically the same exact thing. But yeah, give it a try. It's a really good commander. And yeah, a lot of times people won't like it, so make sure you give them a heads up. But yeah, otherwise, that's going to be it for the video. So I hope you enjoyed, and see you in the next one.